Hello guys, and welcome back to another GSAP and MOTION.PAGE tutorial. You probably have seen this layout where you have the sticky images on the left hand side while you scroll the content on the right, and then the images fades in one after the other as the relevant content comes into view. And today we are going to be taking a look at how to do just that. One of the major challenges with this type of layout is trying to make it responsive. Over in the MOTION.PAGE community, we had some discussions on this issue, and the conclusion was that it's always difficult to make this mobile responsive, and the best bet is just to disable it on mobile. And today we're going to see if we are going to be able to do this to make it work on desktop, and we're going to attempt to make it work on mobile. And of course, if you don't feel okay with the result, you can always disable it on mobile, but I'm pretty confident that you're going to like it. This video is as a result of a request made by a member of the MOTION.PAGE community, referencing this code pen where he saw this layout. As you can see that it's just like what we want to do. Now, but in this case, this method uses fixed position for the image. And the problem with that is if you're using a fixed position, you're not going to be able to have a section above and below this because this image is still going to be fixed. The reason I'm bringing this to your attention is to let you understand why we are not going to use this method because of this drawback. So we're going to use a method that will be able to have other section above and below this section, as well as have it work properly on mobile. Now let's jump into Oxygen and start. Before we begin, I want to let you know that I have a handy affiliate link in the description. That is a MOTION.PAGE affiliate link. So if you want to use MOTION.PAGE, please use my affiliate link. This way I get a small commission at no extra cost to you, and it's a way of supporting the channel. So thank you in advance. We're going to start by adding 3 sections. So I'm going to add a section and then I'm going to duplicate it 2 times. And this is the section we're going to be focusing on. But for this one, I'm just going to give it a background color. So I've gone ahead to give those 2 background colors, and then I'm just going to give it some height. Let's just give it 600 pixel, and then I'm going to give this one 600 pixel. Those sections are just for demonstration to show that we have a section above and below. But the main section we're going to be focusing is on this. I'm just going to rename it to GSAP section. And then inside that section, I'm going to drop a div, and that div is going to be called GSAP inner div. Now this is the layout we are gunning for. So we're going to have a heading here, and then we're going to have this section that scrolls. So this heading is going to be on its own, and then the whole of this section is going to be in another div. So I'm going to add a heading that's going to be a H1, and then I'm going to add another div. So that is going to be our sticky parent. So that's what we're going to be using for our sticky container. I'm going to give it a width of 100%. And for the inner, I forgot I'm supposed to give it a width of 100% also. And then I'm going to just centralize everything there. For this text, I'm just going to go ahead and copy content and give it a font weight of this. And I just want to give it, for my font setting, I'm just going to use ACSA so I can have fluid typography. So I'm just going to give it var text XXL, and that's going to give me a big H1. I need the color to be black. And then I'm just going to give that a line height of 1.5. That's 1.3. Okay. And we'll centralize that. Now, this is one of the few tutorials about GSAP that it is necessary to build out the structure, because this is heavily dependent on the structure. Without getting the structure right, you can't do this. The key here is getting the layout right. And that sums up about, let's say about 70% or 80% of what you're going to do here, because the layout is the most important aspect of this tutorial. So pay close attention. So I'm going to add 2 divs here. I'm going to add div, and then I'm just going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to call this image wrap. I'm going to give it a class of image wrap. I'm using Recorder Workspace. So that gives me this feature where I can add that image wrap class without using the native Oxygen, because it's faster. I can use the keyboard without having to click all the way here. I know it's a waste of time telling you this, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. So I'm going to be using a couple of, but the most important thing is that you get what I'm doing and do it your own native way. So I've added that class image wrap. I'm going to give this a class of content wrap, and then I want to rename that to content wrap. So that gives you the class of content wrap and renames it to content wrap. Inside the image wrap, I'm going to add another div, and that is going to be where my image will be. Typically, I like using background images if the image does not have a semantic value. And in this case, I really don't think that images that disappear and fade out like this have really semantic value. They're just decorative. So I'm going to use a background image. So I'm just going to call this BG image. I'm going to give it a class of .bg image. I'm going to go ahead and select the ID and add the first background image. So I'm going to select my first image. I'm going to choose that. I'm just going to give this a width of, let me select the class. I'm giving it a width of 100%. And then I'm going to give the image wrap a width of 100%. It probably doesn't matter because we're going to be using grid. And for this one, I'm also going to give it a width of 100%. Now for the background image, I'm just going to select the class, go back to that background, and then I'm going to set this to center. And now I'm setting the settings on the class because I want this to have a common setting, but the image URL will be on the ID for each of the images I'm going to add. So I'm going to use no repeat and cover. Now you may see this, instead of typing 50/50, I just clicked on this, so you can click the different, that is Recorder Workspace feature. So if you haven't heard of Recorder Workspace, check it out here. I'm linking it at the top right corner of the screen. Now let's add the contents to our content wrap. So I want to add a heading, a text and a button. So that's what I want to do. So I'm just going to use Recorder and add my H2. And then I'm going to add text. That will be a paragraph. And I also want to add another text, which is also a paragraph. And then I want to add button. So that adds those content inside there. For that heading, I just want to give it a class of GSAP H2. And for this one, I want to give it a class of pretext. There's a reason I call it pretext. Normally, these are the kind of text that stays on top of the heading. So I call them pre-title, also pre-title, yep. But let's just go with that. And then I'm going to give this a class of GSAP text. And for this button, I'm just going to give it GSAP button. Okay. And then for the button, I'm going to go ahead and style it. I'm going to give it a background of black. So I'm just going to give it a background of black. And I'm going to give it a border radius of 50. And then I'm going to style it in the paddings. I want to give it, let's say 4, 1.5, 1.5 rem. All of this are rems. And then let's go back there. I want it to be outline. So I'm going to take that is supposed to be on the hover. So for the hover state, I'm going to make it black, and then I'm going to go back here and make the button color white for the hover state. So we have then for the color of the text, I want to make it black. So we have that, and I'm going to go back to that and give it a solid border, 1.5 pixel black. So yep, so I have my button. Now for this text, I'm just going to make it 500, and then I'm going to just copy something there, sales page. And then for this one, I'm going to copy something there on parallel design. And then for this one, I'm just going to add a bunch of lorem ipsum. And here I'm going to give it a top margin of say 4. Let's try say 6. And then for the button, I'm going to give it a top margin of, let's say 2 or 4. Okay, that spaced out our element nicely. For this, I think that's just too much. Let's make it 1. And then for this, I'm going to use my fluid typography. I'm going to give it var text XL. XL is too much, so just make it text L. All right. So the reason I'm using the ACSS variables is because they make this typography fluid. You can see that how fluid is. I don't want to go in and start wasting time to change those at different breakpoints. Now for that content wrap, I'm going to go to the padding and give it padding space of var space M, and then I want to apply it to all. So now that we have something of it like a structure of what we need. Of course, this needs to be, the sticky parent needs to have a top margin, or let's leave that for now. Okay, so now that we have sort of a structure, let's go ahead and set up our layout. Then before we, I think once we set up our layout, we can now duplicate this content. Now I'm going to select the sticky parent, and then I'm going to set the layout to grid, and the column count is going to be 2, and the minimum width is going to be 0. So if you're using a page builder like Bricks Builder that doesn't have the grid control, you can use the Flexbox layout. But the most important thing is to get the layout we're going to have right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this, and then for this one, I'm going to set this image wrap to a minimum height of 100 VH. So we have that, and then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to center this. And then for the image itself, that's the background image, I'm going to give it a height of 400 pixel. And of course, I want to give it a border of var radius large. Of course, I need to change that to none. For this content wrap, I want to make sure that I set my contents to stack vertically. Of course, that is by default, but I needed to activate that so I can align them to the middle. Okay, let me save what we have done so far before we continue. So now this is the basic layout. So we're going to just duplicate this and this. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this 2 more times. So I'm just going to hit 1, 2. So that gives me 2 of that. And then I'm going to duplicate the contents 2 times. So that I have 3 contents and 3 of this. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to alternate. So the contents will go in between. So this will have image wrap, content wrap. Then I'm going to move that here. So we have, now by doing that, we ensure that all the images are on the left hand side, and then all the text content are on the right hand side. Like I said, if you're using bricks, for the sticky parent, you have to just use Flexbox layout and get this layout. Now, the reason I'm using grid is that it's much easier to use, it's much faster to use grid to do it. So I'm using grid, I'm using oxygen. So if you're using bricks, just get this layout. So I believe this layout shouldn't be difficult to get. So while you look away, I'm just going to quickly change the contents. I don't want you to sit through the burden of, me changing all the content. All right, so I've gone ahead to change the content, so just to have different images. So that's really not a big deal. You can just do that. So let's save this and look at the front end just to see how it looks. So I'm going to be using live server. So yep, so that things can refresh. So yeah, this looks good. So we have our layouts just the way we want it. Now I want to tell you the logic behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now I have this image wrap set to 100% viewport height, and that is because I want it to always stay at one place, because we're going to be using position sticky, and if we don't make it 100 viewport height and we just set it to position sticky, we're going to have it scrolling from the bottom each time this one scrolls. So we want it to stay one place, and then we have this one inside it that will always remain at the same place. And then when we fade in, it's just going to give it that effect. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to set this image wrap to position sticky. So I'm going to go to the CSS and just write position sticky, and then I'm going to give it a top value of 0. So now you can see that the position is sticky. So now you can see that it's still scrolling. We want all this to stay at one place. We want all of them to remain at one place. So the key to make sure that this remains, all of them remain at one place, is to give it a bottom value. So it sticks to the top, it also has to stick to the bottom. So I'm going to give it a bottom value. These are one of the few cases where the bottom value of sticky position comes in really handy, because it's really unpopular. Most of the time when you want to make something sticky, you either give it a top position, which is the most popular, or in a few cases you just give it a bottom position. But giving it both, this is the secret sauce to this effect. So I'm going to save it, and then we're going to take a look at the front end to see how it looks. So now it's refreshed. As you can see that yeah, you can see that it stays at one place. So all of them are overlapping each other. So what we need to do now is to jump into Motion Page and start adding the animation that is going to fade these in and out. Now, but to do that, we're going to first of all determine which one we're going to animate. So we're going to animate the second one and the third one. This one by default remains on the screen just like this. So we have that one stays on the screen. And then when we come in, the second one fades in, and then the third one fades in. So we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to select this, and then this is called image wrap. I'm just going to call it image wrap fading. Just put in one word, and then I'm just going to copy that class and I'm going to paste it here. So these two have that class of fading, and then for that class we're just going to go into the opacity, and then we're going to turn the opacity to 0. So the reason we are doing this is so that we can fade it back in from that 0 opacity. Truthfully, we really don't need to do this. We can simply use GSAP to fade in from 0 to 1, but I usually prefer the 2, you know, fading 2, than in some cases when you load your page. In some cases your content might flash before disappearing, so to avoid that I prefer to use 2. You'll understand when we get to Motion Page. So now we have this, so I'm going to save it. Now we also need to give the image wrap unique IDs, and we also need to give the content wrap unique IDs, because those we're going to be targeting these individually. So I'm going to go these first two, we are not going to animate these first two, so we're just going to leave it like that. Then for this one, I'm just going to give it an ID of GSAP image 2 because it's the second image. And then for the content, I'm going to give it an ID of GSAP. Now that is going to be a trigger. So we're going to give it a trigger 2. The trigger 2 content is going to trigger the image 2. Now this is the third image. I'm going to give it an ID of GSAP image 3. And then for the content, I'm going to give it an ID of GSAP trigger 3. So we have that, and then I'm going to save this. Now that we have our classes and our IDs set up, we're going to jump to Motion Page. I'm going to create a new timeline, and then I'm going to select a page. So the page I'm going to be animating is this GSAP fading sticky images. So I'm going to select that page, and then for my face animation, I'm going to call it now it's always good to name your animation, give it something meaningful, even if it's a sentence. So I'm going to call it fade in second image. That's what. So this timeline is going to be responsible for fading in second image and text. So we want to fade in the second image and the second text. So what we need is scroll trigger, and we want to lock to a scroll bar. We are not going to pin anything because our sticky position already takes care of that. And then we're going to start the timeline when the selector. Now selector means you want to use another element as the trigger. But if you keep it at elements, it means you want to use the object that you are targeting. So we want to use another element as the trigger. And the element we want to use as trigger is the second text. Okay, so I'm just going to click here and scan that part. So GSAP trigger 2 is what we want to use. I'm just going to copy that and also choose element here and paste that. And then for our target, we want to target the second image. So that is supposed to be GSAP image 2. So I can't really get that because it's overlapping. So no matter how I click, can't get that. So I'm just going to go back here and copy that. I'm going to copy that ID. So I'm double clicking to copy that. That's a feature recorder. And then I'm just going to paste that GSAP and then hit enter to accept it. Now, so we're going to be animating this image 2, and we're using the text 2, the trigger 2, which is the text as the trigger. So the next thing we're going to determine is when will this animation start. So you can see that the start and end position is here. So it means that when this trigger 2 enters the viewport, the animation starts and ends when it goes out. But I want it to start early enough. So I'm going to set it to start at 60, and then I want it to end at when this is at 100. So I want it to start when it gets here, and then I want it to end when it goes all the way up. But then I don't want it to go all the way to the end before it ends. So I'm going to choose when it is leaving the scroll bar. I don't want it to end when it's fully visible. So when it's about leaving the scroll bar, I want that animation to end, so that by the time it's already here, this animation is already fulfilled. So what are we animating? We are going to be animating the opacity, and then of course that is not correct. I'm animating to, because we have a default value of 0. So I'm animating to 1. So now if I come here, you can see that that animate in. So I'm going to save that animation. So that animates the image. Now the next thing I want to animate is the text, because the text has to also fade in as it's coming up. So to do that, I'm going to create a new animation node, and then I'm just going to move it in here, and I want to select the selector for that. So I'm just going to check my target will be this trigger 2. So trigger 2 is my target. Trigger 2 is a trigger, but it can also be used to target itself. So now we are saying that when it is coming in, we want to animate from 0, because its default value is 1. So I'm going to animate it from 0. As you can see, it animated from 0. So we have that animation. So I'm going to save that. Now to do it for the third image, what we're going to simply do is to duplicate this timeline. So I'm going to duplicate the timeline, and the timeline is duplicated just like that. And then I'm going to just remove this copy and put this third image and text. I'm going to save that animation. So right now we're working with an entirely new timeline, and for this we want this to be the GSAP image 3 I mean. So I'm going to just hit this to remove it, and I'm going to scan this again if we can get the 3. So I can get the 3, and then this is going to be the trigger 3. Just click that to remove, and let's see, trigger 3. Good. And the trigger 3 is what we're going to use here. So let me just quickly just type in 3 there and 3 there. So trigger 3 is what, so we basically have the same animation, so but we just duplicate it. You see how easy MOTION.PAGE is. I mean, this is just very easy. Once I've set up the first one, I just needed to duplicate the second one, and then we have our animation. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to preview on the front end. So right now this is how it is. Nothing is animating. I'm going to refresh that, and then so when you come here, it animates, and then it animates. Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. Now let's take a look at how this looks on mobile breakpoint. So I'm just going to give it a mobile. Okay, so we need to do some work in Oxygen. So I'm going to go back to Oxygen. I'm going to select the sticky parent, which is grid, and then at this breakpoint it still looks good. Of course, you're not going to see the changes in here, of course, inside Oxygen. Now one thing is, I'm going to give you a tip. Sometimes when doing this kind of layout, you have difficulties seeing your images. Like, you want to see what you're working with, but they are overlapping, and the reason they are overlapping is because we have this position sticky here. Now I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go into the style sheet. Just going to go there, and now if you want to undo what the CSS that you wrote, you don't want it to take effect inside the builder, you can override it. So I can just come here and say .ng-scope is a class that is added by Oxygen to the body. So .image wrap, and then I'm gonna paste that CSS, and the position would not be sticky anymore. So I'm just gonna give it position static. Okay, so you can see that we need to change the opacity. So I'm just gonna change the opacity to 1. So you can see that while we are inside here, we have a normal layout. But if I'm going to just save this, if we go out, okay, if we go look at the front end, you're going to see that a layout is still the normal, the layout we've set up. So I've temporarily disabled this only for the backend. So when you use a .ng-scope selector to target the child element, you will have this result in the backend. So that's just a tip for working inside the builder. So anyway, we're going responsive here. So I'm just going to select that sticky parent, and at this breakpoint everything looks good. I want it to be one grid, one column. So so here we have grid layout, one column. So I'm going to save that, and then I'll go to the front end and check what it looks like. So let's move to the front end. It's going to refresh, and then I'm going to go responsive mode, and you can see that it's, we still have that sticky position. So we don't want to have that sticky position here in the mobile breakpoint. So we're going to go back in, because of course we have disabled the way, the preview by using the .ng scope. So we are not able to see exactly the effect here. So I'm going to go to this wrap, and that is where we had the sticky. Now in this breakpoint, I'm just going to change that to static. That should work. So that takes away the sticky position, and then this top and bottom should not even be there. So can you really delete it? Okay, you can delete it. Yep. Okay, so let's go in and check how this looks on the mobile breakpoint. So so you can see that this looks good on the mobile breakpoint, but the problem is that our animation is starting quite late. So you see it comes quite late, and then when I scroll up, you can see that it's happening, but it's very late. So we need a separate timeline. We need to check out those fonts, see how they scale, very easily. Look at the size, look at that. Oh my God, that is so cool. That is ACSS. So I have an affiliate link for ACSS, so check it out. I mean, yeah, these are nice products, so I have to promote them. So so we have that, and you can see that our fade-ins are so late. So what we're going to do is to go into MOTION.PAGE. We have two timelines now. If you look at the library for this page, we have this and this. So now we want to create another timeline for the mobile breakpoint, because we have our effects working perfectly on the desktop. So to do that, we have to first of all limit this animation to just desktop and laptop. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to select the other one. This is third image and text. I'm going to select the second image and text. I'll also limit it to just the large screen and the laptop. So for our mobile, we want to make sure that we create a new timeline for it. Now you have the setting to set your breakpoint here, so you want to be sure that it's the same as what you're having on your Oxygen's breakpoint, so you can have consistent results. So you want to check that out. For mine, I think it should be okay. So the first one we're going to duplicate is fade in section image and text. So fade in second image and text. So I'm just going to duplicate that, and then I'm just going to add -- mobile. As a matter of fact, I want to add that mobile at the beginning. So I'm just going to add mobile fade in second image and text. Now, and because we are using mobile, so you want to go to the breakpoint that we're going to be working with to preview whatever you're doing, and then down here you want to move these over to that breakpoint. So I'm going to save that. Now for the settings we're going to use, so let's see how it works. Now this comes in. Okay, see that second one comes in, loads quite late. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back here to this start and end position. As you can see, we're on a tablet device. So I'm going to set this ending part. I want to set it to 80. So I want it to start early and end early. Now for this one, if I set it to start at 100, it's going to take it to this point. But I want it to, you can see that it's kind of starting, but I want it to start much earlier than this. So if I give it like 120, so 20% earlier, it's going to move that start position down further below the fold or below the viewport, so that when we come up, it's already starting. And then I want it to finish when it is fully visible. So we don't want it to end prematurely. So when it's fully visible. And then for the text, I want to move the text a bit. So I want the text to come in later on. just like that. So I don't want it to come up at the same time because I want to see the text also animating. So now these animations are rather long, so I just want to move it like say 7 seconds, and this one I'm going to move it to like that. So let's see. Okay, that looks okay. That looks okay. So I'm going to save that because I think that works for our mobile breakpoint. So we're going to use exact same settings for our third image. So now we're not going to duplicate this because that means we're going to be changing all the selector. Let's just take note of these settings, 120/80, and then we move this part. So I'm going to go back to the normal third one, and then I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to put mobile in front, dash, and then I'm just going to quickly make this 120, and this was 80. I'm going to put that 80, and for this I made it like 7 seconds and the same thing, but I moved this over like that. So for the third one, so you can see it comes up on time, and then this image, this fits in. So can I move this just one more step? Yep. All right, so I'm going to save that. Now we're going to take a look at the front end, how the mobile looks. So this was our mobile breakpoint. So this is how the behavior was. So when this first page scrolls up, and of course we have this very long, yeah, we're going to take care of that. So when this scrolls, it doesn't come in even when that button is here. So we're going to refresh this and see what happens. So when this comes in, before that button goes out, you see we're having that it's animating in, and then this one comes in. But we have our height is just too long here, it's very high. So we want to take care of that inside Oxygen. Now let's select that. What's that? Okay, for the image wrap, if we take a look at it, our minimum height was 100 viewport height. Now at this breakpoint, we don't want it to be 100 viewport height, so we're just going to make it like 300 pixels. And then I think this is just how it's going to look. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to preview on the front end, let it refresh, and yep, so we have that. Okay, that works well because everything is. Now this one is it's not working, so I'm not quite sure why. So let's go back there. So it's supposed to be the third one. So third fade in. So what did we get wrong here? So the third one is this. Thank you, and it's working. So why is it not working? So let's just see 3 fading sticky images, fading third, and we have 120. So everything should work normally, because let's check the lower breakpoint here. I'm just going to refresh this to see if everything is working as it should. So inside here it works. Okay, so that means animation is okay, and I'm just going to I'm going to refresh that again just to be sure. So what I forgot to do was that I did not move this. So remember, when you duplicate it, remember to move it, because it's supposed to work just for the lower breakpoint only. So that is what I did not do. So it's good that I made that mistake so you can see it. And if yours is not working, you should be able to guess maybe you made the same mistake. So I'm going to refresh this again and see how it looks. So there, that works. That works. Okay, that's cool. So everything works well. So it's just to go in and clean up our design. So I have this massive gap there. So I'm just going to make it 4. I should have used ACSS for this, and I wouldn't have to bother about that. But anyway, let's just go ahead. And then for this, I'm going to just give it a top padding that so yep, so that cleans up our design, and I'm gonna save it again for one final preview. So before we see how it looks finally, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, hit the notification bell. Of course, you have to subscribe to do that, so you will be notified whenever I bring out something like this again. And one more time, if you want to get Motion Page, please check out the affiliate link in the description. That way I get a small commission at no extra cost to you. And that is going to be your own way of saying thank you for this awesome tutorial. Alright, so let's see how it looks. And that looks good. So it seems we have been able to crack the code of being able to get these to work both on the desktop and on mobile. Of course, you gotta refresh that desktop. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was really fun doing this, and there was a whole lot of challenges. I have to admit this is a rather complex one, but I'm happy that we sorted it out in the end. So go ahead and get Motion Page, and more tutorials on Motion Page will be coming in this channel. Have a great day.